Welcome back to the deep dive. Now, if I were to ask you to name the industrial powerhouse of Europe, the one country whose manufacturing is just this symbol of quality and wealth, you'd say Germany.
Instantly.
But today, we are cracking open a stack of sources that tell a very, very different story. Genuinely a surprising one.
That industrial crown jewel,
Yeah.
it's not just tarnished. We're looking at what economists are now calling a structural crisis. So our mission today is to really dig into how Germany's whole economic model is being hit from two sides at once.
Right, from the outside by these huge global forces, and then at the same time, it's kind of sinking under its own weight.
Exactly.
And we should be clear, we're not talking about some temporary dip here. This isn't a normal recession.
No, not at all. I mean, to put some numbers on this for you, the latest data from August 2025, it shows industrial output just fell off a cliff, down a stunning 5.6% in a single month. And that's just the immediate shock. The real worry is the long-term trend. Industry leaders are all saying the same thing. This problem isn't just going to disappear with the next upswing.
And industrial output is stuck at its 2005 level, right? I saw that in the sources.
That's the one. Think about that for a second. 2 decades of essentially stagnation in their most important economic sector.
Okay, so let's get into the costs. For years, Germany's prosperity was fueled by China's, massive demand for German machines, German cars. But that whole era it's over.
Fundamentally over. And there's one critical data point that really marks this turning point. Since the start of 2025, Germany has recorded its very first 12-month rolling trade deficit with China in capital goods.
The first one ever.
The first since records began in 2008. This is huge. Capital goods, that's the machinery, the factory equipment, that was the bedrock of German exports. Now China is selling more of that stuff to Germany than the other way around.
So China is no longer just the customer. They're the main competitor. And they're competing on price and quality.
At the same time, which is the killer combination.
Yeah, because historically you paid that premium for German quality. But now Chinese capital goods are, about 30% cheaper than the European average?
30% cheaper. And that leads to the really uncomfortable question for German companies. Has the quality gap closed? And the experts on the ground in China, they're saying yes.
So these aren't the cheap imitations anymore.
Not at all. These are high-performing competitive machines. One expert, Spyros Andriopoulos, put it very bluntly. He said China is beating Germany in the very fields where Germany once excelled.
And here's a part of it that I think is really surprising for people. It's the speed of innovation. It's not just about cost and quality anymore. It's about how fast you can move.
Right. The sources say Chinese companies are just more pragmatic, they're faster, they turn an idea into a finished product in about half the time of their Western competitors.
Half the time.
Which means they have much quicker learning cycles, they can iterate and improve far faster than anyone in Europe. While a German firm might spend years perfecting a design, the Chinese are already selling version 3.
We have this fantastic, just visceral example of this in the sources. Philipp Bayat, he's the chairman of Bauer Kompressoren. He needed a new wire processing machine.
Okay.
The quote from a Swiss company was 130,000 euros, a comparable machine from a company in Zhejiang, China, less than 28,000.
Wow. I mean, how do you even compete with that?
You can't. How do you justify that 5-fold price difference when the performance is basically the same? It's impossible.
And that just perfectly captures the margin pressure that every single German manufacturer is facing right now.
Okay, so that's the incredible pressure coming from the outside. Let's talk about what's going on inside Germany. The self-inflicted wounds, as the sources call them.
Yeah, Germany's old advantages are sort of turning into liabilities. High integration, high standards.
Yeah.
That's now become high labor costs and just this crushing bureaucracy.
And executives are getting really vocal about this.
They are. The leaders at Krohn, an agricultural machinery firm, they basically said you can't just keep piling on new regulations and expect to stay competitive globally. It doesn't work.
And that same executive, Philipp Bayat, he said he'd rather spend his energy innovating than just, trying to keep up with constant EU bans and compliance paperwork.
That friction, it costs time and money, and it's time Germany just doesn't have anymore.
And this strain is really hitting the famous Mittelstand, right? Those specialized, family-owned companies that are supposedly the backbone of the whole economy.
The backbone is starting to crack. Take Trumpf. World leader in lasers, machine tools, they just reported their first loss since the 2008 financial crisis.
And sales were down, 16%? forcing them to cut over 1,000 jobs?
1,200 jobs, yeah. And you see the effect of that almost immediately at the local level. In Trump's hometown, Ditzingen, the commercial tax revenue, it's plunged 80% since 2023.
80%, that's not a downturn, that's a total collapse of the local town's finances.
It is. And it's not just the Mittelstand either. You have the giants, Volkswagen, Porsche, Mercedes-Benz, Bosch, Continental. They're all announcing massive cuts.
Which you can then see reflected in the national unemployment numbers.
Absolutely. Unemployment has gone up in 37 of the last 44 months. We're getting close to 3 million people out of work, which is the highest it's been in 14 years. The jobless rate is up to 6.3%.
So, given this monumental crisis from both inside and out, what are the solutions on the table? And are they even big enough for the problem?
Well, the first thing you hear, the first call from business leaders, is for protectionism.
Like in America first, but for Europe.
Exactly that. Martin Hernecht, he runs a big tunnel boring company. He's basically saying Europe first has to become a necessity, not a choice.
And some of these proposals get pretty drastic.
Oh, yeah. One analyst, Sander Tordoir, suggests completely excluding Chinese electric vehicles from any European subsidy programs. Another, Dahlia Marin, argues Chinese firms should only get market access if they enter a joint venture with a European partner.
But there's a fascinating counter-strategy happening at the corporate level, isn't there? Instead of just protectionism, they're trying cooperation.
Yes, look at Trumpf again, the company we just mentioned. They actually bought a Chinese firm way back in 2013, specifically so they could learn how to make more affordable products to sell back in Europe.
So they're almost using China as a training center.
That's how their leaders describe it. They're learning how to compete on speed and cost in a way they just can't in the high-cost West.
Okay, what about the other big hope you hear about? The defense industry. Western Europe is planning to spend hundreds of billions on tanks, drones, ammunition. Can that fill the gap?
That's the political hope for sure.
Yeah.
Goldman Sachs thinks German defense demand will roughly double.
So that sounds promising.
It sounds it, but the economic reality is, well, it's sobering. The defense sector is just way too small. It's less than 2% of employment in Germany's entire metal and electrical engineering sector.
Less than 2%.
To put it in perspective for you, the entire growing tank and armored vehicle sector employs just over 8,000 people. The German toy manufacturing industry employs more people than that. It's not a replacement.
Okay, so if protectionism is tricky and defense is too small, what is the government's grand plan?
Well, they're going for a huge fiscal push. Chancellor Merz has relaxed debt rules and proposed a massive €1 trillion investment over the next decade.
€1 trillion? For what?
Mostly rebuilding infrastructure and strengthening the military. The idea is that this huge debt-financed stimulus can kickstart the economy and fund the transformation that's needed.
And what do economists think? Does it have a shot?
Most of them are cautiously optimistic it could help Germany exit stagnation by 2026. They're forecasting, maybe 1.4% growth then compared to basically zero this year.
But I'm sensing a but.
There's a big but. That boost hasn't actually materialized yet. And there's this huge disconnect between the national policy and what's happening on the ground.
Okay. And we have that powerful anecdote from Patrick Mayer, the finance chief in Ditzingen, the town where tax revenue collapsed by 80%.
Right. He actually calculated what this new national stimulus means for his town. He expects to get about maybe 1.2 million euros a year from it.
Which sounds like a lot until you remember what they lost.
Exactly. He had to cut 35 million euros in planned local investments just to balance the books. So that 1 million from the government, it's a drop in the ocean.
So new fire stations, road repairs, all that is just shelved.
It's shelved for the foreseeable future. The national stimulus is negligible when your entire local financial model has crumbled.
It makes you wonder if the politicians in Berlin really understand how bad it is.
And that is the exact systemic gap that Oliver Richtberg from the Engineering Association pointed to. He said politicians underestimate how severe this is because the public still sort of believes in this myth of German competitiveness.
And he's the one who posed that really crucial unanswered question.
He did. He pointed to Germany's tiny tech and AI sector and just asked, do we really have another industry that can fill this huge gap being created by the erosion of our manufacturing core?
And that really is the core tension for you, the listener, to grapple with. You have this immense pressure from China's cost and speed, and at the same time, Germany's own internal costs and bureaucracy are just strangling its ability to respond.
Right. The sources all point to this not being a temporary problem, but a real systemic decline. When the financial officers in Germany's industrial heartland are all saying the same thing, that the local collapse is outpacing any national fix, you have to listen.
Which leaves us with this final thought. If the industrial powerhouse of Germany, which was the model for high-cost, advanced manufacturing for decades, if it's facing this level of structural decline, what does that mean for similar economic models across the entire West? It really forces you to ask how quickly a strength can turn into a liability in this new global economy. And that's a question we're thinking about long after we're done here.